Under the House, Part 2, The Storm, written by Jackie R. Sisk II, art by C.S. Sisk.
Andy thought about Jane's parents as he collected what he thought he would need in order to get rid of the dead thing under there. He was looking forward to seeing them. His irritation grew, however, as he realized nothing he needed was where it should have been. Finally, he found the garden-sized trash bags inside. Shouldn't be anything that large under there. He took 2 of these just so he could wrap whatever it was as tight as possible and put layers of the plastic between it and himself. Stopping for a moment, he looked up at the overcast sky. He didn't want to be at this for very long. He knew his property had drainage issues and didn't want to be covered in mud when he got out. He grabbed some green garden gloves so that he wouldn't have to touch whatever was under there. Placing the bags on the grill next to the only opening in the mock foundation, he moved to the access point. It was covered with an old piece of thick plywood that had been screwed into the house. Andy kept telling himself that he needed to replace the old thing with some sort of door, but he only thought about it when he had to deal with it. Something struck him as odd about the door. Well, not the door itself, but something was off. It tugged at his mind. He rolled his eyes and went back into the house. He had to find fresh D-cells for his flashlight, and he had to find his drill. Setting these supplies on the ground next to the opening, he went to unscrew the plywood, only to discover that the screws were missing. He could have sworn he secured the opening the last time he used it, but perhaps not. It had been a while. Andy reached out and pulled the old plywood sheet off the access port like a cover on some old lost tomb. The rancid smell hit him in the nose like a boxer's jab. "Well, where is Laura Croft when you really need her?" he asked out loud. His imagination suddenly took over, seeing a dark, evil monster sitting just inside the opening. But that's all it was, his imagination. He switched on the light and dragged the garbage bags behind him as he went in. The underside of his house echoed and yawned out before him. There was just enough room to crawl, so he used his legs and forearms to push himself back toward the front where the living room would have been above him. Panic tried to reach out for him. With an effort he blinked it back. Andy had never been claustrophobic, but the dark, the damp, and the foul odor of rotting things, mixed with the sour black clay, pushed the panic on him just the same. He was about 10 feet into the trek when the stinging started. "Shit!" he yelped, rubbing his neck and arms with his glove-covered hands. He moved the flashlight over to see what was crawling on him. "Goddamn fire ants!" He scowled, brushing them from his body. He had to move quickly to keep them from swarming him. "At least now I know where the ants went after I treated the yard." The annoying and painful pests usually just moved when you killed one of their piles. Andy moved quickly, much more quickly leaving than he had entered. He went inside the house, took off his mud-smeared shirt, and looked in the mirror. Angry welts appeared all over his neck, chest, and arms. "Thank God I'm not allergic to the little bastards," he thought to himself, making sure there were no more crawling on him, then went back outside with his recently discarded shirt. Andy meant to put it back on, but dumped the shirt on the front porch as he went back around to try again. "Just have to be more careful and watch where the hell I'm going," he said out loud to the air. Again he traversed the underside of the home, carefully avoiding the area where he discovered the ants, while keeping an eye out for more of their colonies that probably infested the lightless domain. During this careful crawl on his belly, now skin touching ground, he kept banging his back on the beams that ran above him supporting the house, once or twice scraping the skin on his back. "Why the hell didn't I put my shirt back on?" he complained to himself. Again Andy sighed. "Because you are in a hurry and can't ever think these things through." "Well, Andy, old boy, you have finally lost it. You are answering yourself now," he chuckled. His laughter cut off as he felt another crawling sensation on his arm. It wasn't the same as the ants. Hell, he didn't even notice them until they stung him. He shifted his light to view his arm and saw a large black spider making its way toward his face. "Oh, fuck!" he explained, and dropped the light. Andy smashed the spider on his arm out of reflex, but not before it could bite him. "I really hope it wasn't a poisonous one." Then he stopped and thought of something that made him feel a little better. What if it was radioactive? Then he shook his head. That comic book hero had always been his favorite. The thought gave Andy the strength to keep going. He had to keep reminding himself that he could deal with the dark and a few bugs. All he had to do was get the rodent or whatever had crawled into the dark down there out of the crawl space. "I'm calling an exterminator tomorrow, though. This is crazy." Again he started forward and banged his back. "Shit!" he growled, but kept moving toward the living room. He stopped for a moment. Something large and covered in fur was lying about 5 feet in front of him, but he couldn't make out exactly what it was. He could see that the fur was gray, and was large enough to be a small dog, but he doubted that. It was then that the thunder started. "Just my luck," he growled and started forward again. Once he was close enough to reach out and touch the form, he realized what it was. "A fucking coyote," he whispered, fearing deep down that the thing might hear him, a result of his irrational fear of dead things and their bloating, rotting bodies. Andy held up his light and pushed himself a little to get up closer at the animal. His back struck the main support beam under the living room and heard a crack. "Shit," he muttered, no longer whispering. He stayed up, though, and did get a better look at the animal. The thing had been dead for a while. Its eyes were gone. The maggots had replaced them. Also, there was a gaping wound in the creature's side where more maggots crawled and squirmed. Andy forced himself not to retch. That would be bad, he thought. Making sure the gloves were indeed tight, he fumbled with the garbage bags. Thankfully, he had opened them before he entered the subterranean realm under his house. Another clap of thunder sounded outside. It was muffled by the enormous weight of the house above him, but it was close, and it made him jump. Again his back hit the beam, and again it made a thundering crack. And he didn't like the sound. Not at all. Better hurry, he thought, and went about his business. He ended up on his side, having positioned himself to slide the rotting carcass into one of the bags and slid the other bag up over it. Once the beast was halfway in, he tried to move to get the rest to slide in, all the while holding his breath for fear of vomiting when the smell hit him full force. Again Andy's back struck the beam, but this time, instead of a crack, there came a loud, ripping sound. He tried to jump out of the way, but the crawl space wouldn't allow for any maneuvering. The beam and all the weight it supported came down on his back, pinning him horribly in the sour, black clay and darkness under his home. His body twisted at several strange angles. Sharp racks of pain issued from his back and ribs. His vision swam for a moment, and then he passed out, the darkness overtaking him. It was the water that woke him. Andy's head ached, and his chest felt like it was on fire from the inside. Most frightening was the fact that he could not feel his legs. "I've broken my back," he said, not even recognizing his own raspy, weak voice. He tried to move, but couldn't budge even a single inch. "I'm fucked," he groaned. And then there was the water. Holy shit, he thought. If there indeed came a storm, then he was finished. If the water came up enough to cover his face, he wouldn't have a chance. He would drown 50 miles from any lake, 300 miles from the ocean, and at least a mile from any creek. All that would be left of him would be a pale, shirtless corpse, wearing tight green garden gloves. He felt the cold plastic bag against his cheek. A thought struck him out of nowhere. How the hell did you get under here? The only access was closed. It's not like the damn dying animal could have opened and then closed it behind himself. Then he remembered the large, ragged hole in the side of the animal. It had been shot. Andy was no expert, but he knew a bullet hole when he saw one. He had seen the same kind of hole before when his father had shot a bobcat that was taking chickens from the old home place. The hole was big enough that there was no way the animal could have survived long. A sound jerked him out of his thoughts. It was his cell phone. It was ringing, and he recognized the ringtone as his wife's. Hope bloomed inside of him, deep down inside of his gut where it had almost been lost. If she doesn't get me, then she'll know, he thought. She'll know something is wrong. But she wouldn't. She'll just think he was on his way, that he'd been in the car on his way to meet her. He never answered his phone in the car. Not to mention he'd left the phone with his tools outside the entrance. Fuck! I'm going to die. Sweet Jesus, I am going to die with a broken back. And the only one here is this coyote. And he ain't gonna whisper sweet things into my ear to pass me off into the dark unknown. Fuck! An even darker thought hit him then. Someone put this damn thing here. Had to. There was no other way for it to get under there. The access was covered. Even if it had fallen or something, the damn coyote didn't put it back. But who? Who put it here? I can't imagine Jane shooting a gun or even coming close to touching a dead animal. Who does that leave? Who the hell put you here? It doesn't matter, Andy, old pal, old buddy. That little sarcastic voice he always had in his head muttered. This time, however, it seemed to come from the corpse lying next to him. You were the one who went and broke his back. You were the dumbass that went crawling under the house just before a rainstorm. What really matters, old buddy, is that the water is up to your lower lip. What matters is that even if your wife does come, it won't be in time. What matters, Andy, is that you are going to die. And that was it. The only thing left to him was time. The sickening sort of time when nothing could be done. Nothing left to accomplish, and nothing left to say. There were only two things that sort of time was good for. One was deliberating fear, and enough of that had already poured through him. So he could lay there and wait for the end, or he could do the only other thing left to him. He opened his mouth, but a rush of water quickly entered, causing him to cough and splutter. The more he coughed out, the more tried to rush in. It tasted foul, foul enough for him to realize in horror that some of the water had mingled with what was left of his friend the coyote. After a few terrifying moments, he got it all out, swallowing some of the nasty liquid, but most of it was out. I'll get a disease from that, he thought, and almost laughed at the absurdity. Andy knew he only had a few moments left. God, he thought, I would pray out loud, but I can't. This isn't how I thought I'd go, and I guess it's too late to ask that you save me. All I want, before I go to wherever I must go, is for you to take care of my Jane and the boys. Please, God, let her be safe and live a long time. I love her so much. The water was flooding up inside his nose. No time left, Lord. Help my kids to know that I love them. Keep them safe and happy and let them grow up. Please, Lord. He couldn't hold his breath any more. The burning, seething feeling in his chest erupted in a great exhale, followed closely by the deep inhale of foul water. He tried to cough the water out, but there was only more. His lungs were heavy. The blackness came slower this time, but the blackness this time was final. Andy Crawford's last thought was, who the fuck put the... Unfortunately, he would soon know everything. Or nothing. Jane Crawford stopped the van in the driveway and got out. It was early Sunday morning. She waited while her parents' new Oldsmobile pulled in behind her. The kids rode with their Grandma and Granddad. "Well, the car's still here," her father remarked offhandedly as he got out. "Why don't you and the kids stay in the car for now, Mags?" he told his wife. "I don't like this, Dad." Jane's face was openly worried. "The door is open. That's not like Andy. He's religious about locking the door before bed." "Maybe he's out back," her father shrugged. "I hope so. Tell you what, you go in and I'll check out back. Let's see what we find before we jump to conclusions." She ran up the steps and entered the house. There was something odd about the living room. It wasn't the water on the floor, though that was odd too. It was like the door had been opened during the storm. Something else seemed odd, but she couldn't catch on to it. Not at first. She left the living room and ran into the bedroom, calling out her husband's name. "Andy! Andy! Andy, where are you?" But nothing came back. The house was eerily quiet. The house was horribly silent. She raised her voice again. "Andy!" The bedroom was empty, and the bed had not been slept in. It was just the same as it had been when she left in the day before. She went next to the bathroom. Here the room had changed, but only a little. There was mud on the floor. Not a lot of mud, but there was some. Every other room was the same. They all had that empty, ghostly quality to it. All of them but the living room. The coffee table had moved. No, she thought, that's not it. It's leaning oddly. That was it. That was what was wrong. The floor dipped outrageously. It's like the supports. Oh my God! She ran out the door, banging the screen behind her. "Dad!" she yelled. "Daddy! Oh my God!" When she turned the corner, she found her father coming out from under the house, covered in mud and muck. She stood stock still, frozen, fearing the worst. When she saw his face, she knew. "No!" she wailed. "It can't be! No, 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 no!" "I'm sorry, hon," her father tried as he reached his arm around her. But she beat her fists on his chest. "Get him out!" she demanded. "There's no way. It'll take a crew to do it. The whole weight of the house is on top of him." She stopped beating her fists into her father's chest and seemed to sob. Oliver Martin lay in the bed smoking a Camel. He loved fucking this chick. She was the best he ever had, and he didn't know how he had made it through life without her. They'd been doing that for over 2 years, and it never got old. Oh, he wasn't in love with her, but he did love fucking her. "How'd you do it?" she asked for the 5th time that day. "You don't want to know," he said, and took another drag. After he blew the smoke into the air, he said, "Where are your kids?" "They're with Mom. I left them there so I could pick up the insurance checks." He chuckled. The grieving widow. "How much you get?" She looked over at him and smiled. It was the same smile that she used to light up her husband's face. "After the accidental death thing, about 300,000 from his life insurance. I got another 2 from the homeowner's insurance." He whistled low and long. $500,000, and all we had to do was kill a useless prick and break his old house. He paused and looked at her. "You feeling guilty?" She laughed. "Not at all. Andy was a nice man. Too damned nice. And he had no fucking ambition. He wouldn't stand up to anyone and gave in all the time. No fucking backbone. And he would have kept us poor until one of our kids stuck us in a retirement home to get rid of us. That's cool. So how did you do it?" Oliver mashed out the cigarette on the side table, not even bothering with the ashtray, then rolled over and cupped one of her large, firm breasts. "You sure you want to know?" "Yep." He licked his lips. "I shot a coyote in the yard. Fucker fell right there." He laughed. "Anyway, I called you first thing." "I remember." "While you were all at work and school and whatnot, I drug the thing up under your house. It's a nasty down there, and I got into some fire ants for my trouble. Once it was under there, I removed the stabilizers they put on the main support beam so that if anyone hit it from underneath it would break in half. I figured luck would help us out. Hell, bitch, I always been pretty lucky." She giggled like a little schoolgirl. "It worked just fine." "Yep," he said, and started to pull out another cigarette. "No," she said, putting a hand on the pack. "What?" he asked. "Fuck me again." He did.
So that's it. That's how you subvert expectations, really, right there. I was told the first time somebody read it that they expected a monster or something to be under there. Um, you know, we really just, I'm just a writer. I just want to put my stuff out there. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, please let me know why. Let me know if things were confusing, if things didn't line up like they should have, if I should have characterized a little bit better. Be as detailed or as vague as you would like, but I would really appreciate the help. Again, if you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. But again, most importantly, leave a comment. Uh, this is Storman signing off. Thank you.